and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together ooky, the Addams Family.
Good afternoon from Mickey and from me from Castle Goring. Mickey is just greeting us, and after she has greeted us, she is going to be going upstairs to rejoin her puppies, because Mickey doesn't want to be separated from those wonderful puppies for longer than a second. So, if I may, I will plunge right in once I release Mickey from this. Well, Mickey is dispatched upstairs to be with her wappies. Mickey is a wonderful mummy. She wants to be with those wappies the whole time, except when she needs to go outside to maintain decorum. So without further ado, since we have quite a lot of terrain to cover, I will read out the first question, which is from Dennis King. Dear Lady C, first of all, let me congratulate you and Mickey on the delivery of the pups. Thank you. There is nothing more adorable than puppies, you can say that again. And Mickeys are beyond cute. Now let me plunge right in. What do you think about Harry's legal action against the Home Office for UK security? I can think of a few reasons he would take this action. Well, yes, I can think of a few reasons why he'd take it as well. First of all, Harry understands that if he has internationally protected status, he has automatic security. And if he has been demoted from that, which he has, he doesn't have it. That's certainly one of the reasons. What do I think of his legal action? I think it is a display in disgustingness. I think it is a display in arrogance, impertinence, big-headedness, pig-headedness, ingratitude. But let us see what happens. Because Harry is pleading that he is not able to come to this country with his wife or children, or by the sound of it himself, because their lives and his life are in such danger from the British people. How does that work? He's been back twice since he decamped, and nothing happened. He says he was on one occasion chased by the paparazzi. Since when were the paparazzi a dire threat to anybody's life? Plus the fact you don't have to be chased by the paparazzi. You can give them the photograph they've come for and they won't chase you. Harry, I have this on the highest authority, including Audrey Hepburn. Only those who wish to be chased by the paparazzi are chased on a regular basis by the paparazzi. You notice Catherine and William aren't chased by the paparazzi, and they're infinitely more popular than Harry and or Meghan. I think it's horse manure. I think it's beyond belief that a member of the royal family could take on his grandmother's government and try to get the rules changed so that he will be able to pose as rather more important than he is, a posture, incidentally, that he has been religiously hanging on to for much of his life. Why do you think his first relationships failed? Because none of the girls wanted to live in a paranoic's fantasy world. Now, I realise, having answered the question, that in fact, there are several subtexts to it, so I'm going to just go through them. 1, it's for spite because his security was removed when he stepped down as a senior royal. This is just another way to whine. He's already returned at least twice to the UK without the security he's now demanding. Very good point, my dear. Very good point, Mr. King. Number 2 from Mr. King. It's an excuse for him not to return to the UK with Meghan, Archie and Lily. I honestly don't think Meghan wants to return at all, or that she would allow the children to go without her back to the UK, security or not. That's a very interesting point. Meghan and Harry need Britain to be his domicile. Now, there's a big difference between residency and domicile. You are domiciled where your ultimate home is. You can be resident in a country for 50 years, and it doesn't have to be your domicile. Your domicile is one of the tests, I'll tell you, because I know a little bit about the whole business of domicile, because for many years I was non-domiciled in Britain. My domicile was Jamaica. In those days, it had tremendous tax advantages. It doesn't anymore. It was called domicile of origin. Wherever you originated, you could elect that place could be your place of domicile, and you could be resident elsewhere. If Harry is not domiciled in the United Kingdom, he loses even more in terms of status than he already has lost. He would lose the right to be a Counsellor of State. And I'm going to come to this in a little while because I think it's something we need to touch upon. But the fact of the matter is, Harry, as a non-resident, while he can qualify for the status because of his position in the line of succession to being a Counsellor of State, in reality, if he's out of the country when he's needed as a Counsellor of State, and he can't get back in time for the duration, no matter how open-ended it is, he's simply not removed as a Counsellor of State. It simply leapfrogs to the next in line of succession, which is Princess Beatrice. There have been situations like this happening in the past. For instance, I think it was during the war, when Princess Arthur of Connaught and the Countess of Southesk, her sister, were both made Counsellors of State because one of the more immediate adults in the line of succession was a prisoner of war. His name was Lord Lascelles. He was the Princess Royal of the time, Princess Mary, who was the only daughter of King George V and Queen Mary. He was her son. but he couldn't fulfill his duties as a counsellor of war because he was a prisoner of war. So I think I said counsellor of war. I meant a counsellor of state if I said counsellor of war. I'm not going to redo this. I'm sorry. It's if it's a slip of the tongue, I'm sure you'll bear with me. So Harry is protecting his position, his royal position, and giving himself a valid excuse for why he can't come back, because it's too dangerous. He might be followed by the paparazzi. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's such a pity Mickey isn't here, otherwise I'd ask her to catch that flying pig. And the last of Mr. King's subsections are, it's for publicity to keep his ties to the monarchy in the news. Spot on, Mr. King, spot on. I have no doubt that Harry and Meghan will do anything to keep themselves in the news, no matter how odious. So, I've answered the question before, realizing that you had those points, and they have been very instructive, and thank you for them. Swan Song says, Dear Lady C, where in history do you think that the traitor Prince Henry will stand? Will he stand amongst the most heinous? I am so astounded at his treachery. Well, Swan Song, I want to be very careful. That's your opinion, and I can well see why you have arrived at it. But if I may, I'm going to protect myself legally by saying that I do not necessarily think that the word traitor is one that has to apply to Harry, nor do I think that so far his betrayals and treachery, let's use treachery for, but loosely, using it for legal reasons, it's very loosely used. How heinous? Well, I think the results are going to be the thing that will determine whether Harry goes down in history as truly heinous or just a jerk of the highest order. But his latest act of treachery, according to people who keep their eye on this ball, has been in this Sunday's Sunday Times, because there are leaked emails, and they're not leaked to the royal reporters. Headline says, I'll show you. Emails reveal Harry's cash for access concerns over Saudi billionaire. Now you will remember that the Sunday Times is the newspaper that has been trying to foment trouble for Prince Charles, trying to make out that perfectly innocuous charitable fundraising attempts are somehow corrupt and or sleazy. I've covered this in a previous video, so I'm not going to cover it again. Harry's response wasn't to be silent or supportive of his father, but to announce, I told him so, I told him so, I'm a virtue signaller, I told him so. I think that many people would regard as treacherous, certainly, at the very least, disloyal. Well, this article makes it absolutely clear that a leak has come from somebody who has access to Harry's emails. Now, Mark Dyer is mentioned, but there is little suspicion devolving upon Mark Dyer's head. He would have signed the Official Secrets Act. He is ex-army. He has sworn loyalty to the Queen as his commander-in-chief. I can't think of any present or former member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces, except for one person who springs to mind, who will have regarded his or her vow as something to ignore. I know several military people, and they all take their oath of loyalty to the Queen seriously. The only person who hasn't taken it seriously, going off his conduct to date, is her grandson, Harry. The suspicion in certain quarters, and I'm being very measured as to what I say, is that Harry's people are the ones who have leaked this information to keep the story alive, to damage, it has to be to damage his father, because if it's not to damage his father, why would they keep the story alive? It's also, I have to tell you, yet another attempt to make a sow's ear look like a silk purse. Now, Harry and Meghan have form with trying to turn sow's ears into silk purses. Both of them are sow's ears, and they try to pretend that they're silk purses. That's just in their personal demeanour and their pretensions to grandeur and to being grander than they are. Well, Harry, the information that emanates concerning Harry is that he had concerns about Mr. Mahfouz, because Mr. Mahfouz wanted to give, I think it is £1 million to Harry's charity, but wanted Harry to go and visit him and his family in Saudi Arabia. And the mention was made that I am seeing Prince Harry today. This, incidentally, is Mark Dyer. I am seeing Prince Harry today at Windsor. I will brief him on the situation and see if he now wants to commit to a trip. But this certainly was not our understanding. It is starting to bring into question cash for access. No, it's not Mark Dyer. It's perilously close to it, but it's not. It's not, because that's not the way the charity world works in any country. In Australia, you're given honours, Australian honours, for donating to charity. In the United States, you're given tax breaks. In England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, I should say, and Wales, you are given rewards for making sure that you have donated to charity. Not everybody, but if you're sick, if you're going to be doing, and I have to tell you, I'm not entirely comfortable with the way Mr. Mahfouz was operating. I just make that point for what it's worth. Perilously close as it came to, it wasn't cash for access. It was one hand washing the other. And it's perfectly standard in the charity world. I don't know why Mark Dyer, he was clearly ignorant of how the charity world works, unless he'd spoken to Harry, who is paranoid and dumb, and whatever knowledge he had of how the charity world works, I can tell you it's infinitely out of kilter with the realities of it. But Harry's real concerns are then spelt out a little bit later. And I'm going to read what he says. That I then discussed with Prince Harry, and quite rightly, he has a major concern that we are losing, he meant losing, touch with what all this is about. It's not about M, standing for Mahfouz, meeting PH, standing for Prince Harry, and introducing him to his friends and Mahfouz's advisor, having as many photos as possible of PH on his desk. And he doesn't have the correct punctuation, so it's the wrong way of saying it's. But anyway, it's about the children of Lesotho and Sentabali making a difference to their lives. Well, I have to tell you, I've never read such codswallop in my life. If Harry and Dyer were naive enough to think that the man was going to give £1 million for nothing, they turned out to be quite wrong. And indeed, they were wrong, because he only gave £50,000. However, he went on to give £2.5 million to Prince Charles. Yes, he got something in return. What? You know, Rupert Murdoch is really a very dangerous individual. So that he can power play and power broke and create havoc and mischief, so that he is the king-maker, as if he is the Earl of Warwick of Shakespearean yore. He will twist, turn and pervert any perfectly normal practice that is accepted internationally and try to pretend that it is something it is not. Rupert Murdoch, when last did you give £2.5 million in return for getting some recognition or none? You didn't do it. You've never done it. You're never going to do it either. What to me is outrageous in all of this isn't only how the Sunday Times is twisting and turning things, because yes, Mr. Mahfouz was gonna give £1 million for Harry to go for 24 or 48 hours. I mean, how important is Harry? That, well, I shouldn't even ask that rhetorical question. We know how important Harry regards himself, because he'll give a speech for 20 minutes and he expects £1 million for it. So I suppose Mr. Mahfouz was supposed to come up with £48 million to have his rancid little presence in Saudi Arabia for 2 days. Well, I don't know. I think a sort of idiot prince going and getting £1 million for a charity for 48 hours is time well spent. And Mr. Mahfouz obviously regarded it as money well spent. And when Harry didn't give him the opportunity to have, yes, Harry, it's all about the pictures on the desk. What do you think it was about? I mean, you're so goddamn brain dead. It's unbelievable. I mean, you talk about just an idiot. But not only an idiot, a treacherous idiot at that. My understanding is that in certain quarters, this article has caused such rage and such outrage because Harry's people, and notice how I say it, Harry's people, are stoking the fires and causing trouble for his father and for the fundraising ability of his father, for all of the charities. I mean, Harry and Meghan haven't figured out yet that for all of their pontifications, and we can use other words and we're not going to use them, they have raised $50,000 in the last year for charity, while his father has raised tens of millions. And they're trying to bring down Prince Charles? Crikey. I have to tell you, I don't know about you, but this to me is so appalling. And I know I'm not alone in thinking like this, because I know people are beyond outraged at this, because unless Harry and or Meghan have given free access to his emails from before he even met that frowsy cow, there is no way anybody has access to those emails, because I don't for a second believe that Mark Dyer has leaked it. I know as a fact that Santa Barley hasn't leaked it. I know as a fact this Lesotho royal family didn't leak it. That leaves Harry and or Meghan and or their people. Maybe they didn't leak it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're innocent. They're innocent about with everything. Maybe it's all a terrible accident. Or maybe it's to boost him at his father's expense. I have to tell you, the more things like this happen is the more disgusted and sickened and quite frankly defiled I feel having to even address matters like this. Eddie Dai says, Dear Lady C, regarding the situation with Her Majesty's health re-COVID, do you know if Harry is being taken off the list of 4? If Her Majesty is not able to continue with her duties, I hope this is being sorted. God bless the Queen and may she have a full recovery. Thank you for your videos, Edith. No, he is a Counsellor of State by right of birth. If it turns out that his presence is required and he is not able to fulfill his duties, as I said a bit earlier, it simply leapfrogs to the next person, next functional available adult, which will be Princess Beatrice. Princess Beatrice will play to him what Princess Arthur of Connaught played to the later on Earl of Harwood, but who in those days was still Lord Lascelles. Let's see what happens. Because, of course, if Harry can't come over here because of security, he's not going to be able to do his duty. Although, of course, it will be very interesting to see if he comes over, what will happen. I certainly wouldn't want to be present for any of those conferences, meetings, engagements, or whatever word you want to use to call whatever would be happening. Patty Tada says, Lady C, could you comment on the Privy Council and what would happen if the Queen became incapacitated? It is my understanding it would be Prince Charles, William, Andrew and has been. It is hard to imagine that this group could work in unison and in the best interests of the country. Also, the lack of foresight by the Queen on this subject is alarming. The Queen has no lack of foresight on this subject. It is a feature of the Regency Act and it's been around since during the Second World War. I think it might even have been just before. I've written about it, but I really don't remember. It's not important enough for me to refresh my memory upon. But it's nothing to do with the Queen. It's the law. And as I've said before, it means that if Harry is incapable of fulfilling his duties, Princess Beatrice will do it instead. I think that would be a far more civilized solution to the problem that Harry stays in California and Beatrice becomes the Counsellor of State in his stead. Of course, he will need, and Meghan will need, a very good excuse for why he is not able to come, because I'm not sure that there is any excuse that's good enough that's not going to affect their royal status and the perception of it in the United States of America, which is where they're concerned about, nowhere else. And I suspect he will move heaven and earth. But you never know, because when you're dealing with people who are as off the wall as Harry and Meghan, they don't always do the thing that is in their best or anybody else's best interests. The two people it's really difficult to deal with are fools and lunatics. Even evil people are easier to deal with, because as long as they're not insane, they know which side their bread is buttered upon. Fools and nutcases? Not a chance. Venus Rising says, Lady C, prayers for Her Majesty the Queen having COVID and congratulations on Mickey and her sweet pups. They are so adorable, I can't tell you. The anti-monarchists should realise the government makes a very healthy profit, approximately £1,714 million per annum from the monarchy. This is from the web. A consultancy called Brand Finance estimated in 2017 that the monarchy's annual contribution to the UK economy was around £1.8 billion a year. British taxpayers funded the Queen to the tune of £85.9 million in 2020 to 2021, the royal accounts show. Of that, £51.5 million went towards official travel, property maintenance, and the operating costs of the monarch's household. So in other words, staff, etc. Doesn't go into the royals' pockets. Then Megsy and H. Somebody on YouTube is reporting she has been allegedly ordered to complete bed rest, possibly because of another pregnancy. Oh my gosh, Mickey, if you were here, I'd ask you to come and fly into my tum-tum and swell it. Oh. I suppose it would depend what time in the day that I was going to be around, because maybe I would lose inches. The way Meghan lost inches when she had on that ghastly purple and orange or tangerine or whatever it was outfit. Because 1 minute she was about to explode and the other, miraculously, she had a almost flat tummy. Don't know how that happened, but the pictures are there on the internet for all to see. Maybe she hunched and in her yoga practices has perfected the art of swallowing not only air, but the baby. And so the baby didn't show. But another pregnancy is doubtful, but it's a built-in excuse for her absence from anything for 9 months. Well, Eugenie and her husband and the baby have been doing photo ops and Spotify and Netflix time with Harry and Meghan and Archie and Lily. Don't think they're there for no purpose at all, my dear. They're there for a very useful purpose. Content is what it's called. Content. They need to fulfill their contracts, and since they were incapable of doing it, they being Harry and Meghan, Spotify and Netflix have taken over the executive editorial positions and are managing things. And you can depend upon it that sometime down the line, Megsy baby and Harry are going to be playing very happily families with Jack and Eugenie and August, and it's just going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. Another pregnancy. I thought she said she was going to stop at 2. And since I have no doubt that she is sufficiently woke and sufficiently of the age that abortion is no problem whatsoever, that even if she were pregnant, she would be honouring her commitment to humanity. Because remember, she has to honour her commitment to humanity because she's a great humanitarian. I don't know what more to say. I'm sure you are thinking, whatever next? Well, let us see what happens next. Because fortunately, the last time Meghan was pregnant, she managed to retreat from public view for most of the pregnancy instead of clutching the belly the way she had clutched it throughout the pregnancy with Archie. And note, I have made it very clear that Meghan was pregnant. She was. We have her word for it. We have her word for it. There's no need to disbelieve that or any other fact, no matter what, because the reality is that everything is a talking point where they're concerned, and every sleight of hand might actually conceal another sleight of hand. So I just say that for what it's worth. So, a change of tack from one tacky couple and a one tacky person to another. AB, has Virginia apologised to the girls she procured yet? AB, what a brilliant question. I don't think she should only be apologising, and I'm sure she hasn't, because that's one creature who's certainly never going to take any responsibility for any of her wrongdoing. You only need to look at the way she functions. It's very concerning. If you have any moral compass whatsoever and 2 brain cells in your head, I don't think she's ever going to apologise, nor do I think that she is going to compensate those girls whose lives she ruined. She says her life was ruined by being procured and by being trafficked, but she only starts to complain about people with money. Yet she had, I think, about a 3 or 4 year period before when she was heavily on the game and making money and trafficking and being trafficked and selling herself and exchanging herself, and also on 3 separate occasions lying about having been interfered with by certain men. All of this long before she ever met Giuffre Epstein or Maxwell or any of that lot. Is she going to share any of her ill-gotten gains? Has she ever shared them? Is she going to, now that she feels that the people who trafficked her are deserving of punishment, does she not think that she is deserving of punishment as well? Because she is deserving of punishment as well. Once she turned 18, she became legally liable. I don't think she's going to apologise ever. I think, I have to tell you, I'm hoping that we can come off this subject sooner rather than later, because I think it is so sleazy just looking at that woman with her blubbering, and also phony. And people feel sympathy for such a consummate actress. Why isn't she handing over her money to others, to those she trafficked? If she deserved it, so do they. If her traffickers deserve to pay her, she deserves to pay those she trafficked. Jane Collinson says, question, dear Lady C, do you think that as Virginia Giuffre now has millions in a charity, that the victims she trafficked should sue her? Jane Collinson, I'm not sure that they can sue her. The New York state authorities played with the statute of limitations to allow this case and others like it to be brought. The statute of limitations applied for only the extension, I should say, of the statute of limitations applied for only a finite period. It has expired. Do I think that they can sue her? I doubt that they have grounds for suing her legally because of the statute of limitations. However, I think they ought to get together and do to Virginia what Virginia's done to everybody else. Become very vociferous. Demand that she be tried and that she be convicted for the crimes she committed against them. It won't be only about money. This time it will be truly about justice. I think that's what she deserves, and I think that's what she should get. I don't for 1 second have sympathy for anybody who does to others what they moan about having had done to them. I am afraid I know too many people who've had truly difficult lives and who have never done anything immoral. To excuse people on the grounds that their immorality is somehow due to the fact that they should get a free pass for it. No, they don't deserve a free pass for it. And she, of all people, doesn't deserve a free pass for it because she has hounded 2 men to their death so far. Which bit of course, I was about to say, which bit of it is wrong to hound somebody who has harmed you to their death, doesn't she understand? But of course, we live in a post-Christian age. We live in an age where morality and right and wrong and compassion and decency don't count the way they did when I was younger. And I think it's a great shame because the fact of the matter is she's speaking about accountability, that others should be accountable to her. She needs to be accountable to all those girls she trafficked. If she deserves justice, so do they. And my recommendation to them would be that they form a committee and try to get her tried for the crimes she has acknowledged she committed. She acknowledged them when she thought it was in her financial interest. She's now tried to put distance between herself and those crimes by saying she was a victim. Yes, she was a victim. You know, the fact that you are a victim doesn't give you a free pass. You know, most people who are perverted were somehow victims in the past. Since when did what happened to you in the past become a free pass for what you are today? I'll tell you since when. Since personal responsibility, since morality, since right and wrong, since good and evil went out the window as Louboutin and Max Mara and Versace came swinging in through the window of opportunity. Amanda Morton King says, I cannot understand why Virginia Giuffre isn't being prosecuted as Ghislaine Maxwell was, nor can I. It might be argued that Giuffre was a victim as well as a procurer, but then many paedophiles are that way because of the abuse they have previously experienced. But that's not taken as an excuse not to prosecute them. What is wrong with the American legal system? Excellent question. We have covered much of the terrain. What is wrong with the American legal system? America has one of the highest conviction rates in the world. It's right up there with states like North Korea, Russia, China. I think it has an even higher conviction rate than Russia. You know what one of the most eminent members of the British legal profession said to me last week? He said, America doesn't have a legal system, it has a blackmail system. That's what he said. And I'm not entirely sure that I agree with that, but I pass it on for what it's worth. There is certainly something seriously wrong with the American legal system as it stands. And I cannot tell you to what extent it distresses me, because the American people are a great people and a noble people and a generous people, and they deserve better. But American society has become divisive, divided, and the system is corrupting itself and devouring itself through its corruption. I'm sorry, because there are many good things about America. It is still in some ways the land of opportunity, and in some ways it's still one of the most wonderful countries on earth, if not the most wonderful country on earth. However, it needs to watch out because it is in big trouble. And the trouble stems from within, not from without. Country Life says, congratulations, Lady C and Mickey, on the birth of the gorgeous puppies. Well done. It was an ordeal for Mickey, and I have to tell you something. It wasn't a picnic for me either, because I was up the whole time. However, my suffering was infinitely tiny compared to Mickey's, which was infinitely greater. We have a news and current affairs show in Australia called 60 Minutes that airs on Sunday evenings. Last Sunday, the topic was about Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre's court case. It was filmed before the settlement with interviews with David Boys, Paul Page, Nigel Cawthorne, Virginia Giuffre, and her ex-boyfriend Anthony Figueroa. At no time did the interviewer ask where the original photo of Virginia and Prince Andrew was, as Virginia held up the A4 photocopy. I thought this may have been asked considering all the talk of a fake. Anthony Figueroa seems to have changed his tune, having said that Virginia had no choice but to go when that person, Epstein, so powerful, knows where you live, and that she didn't feel safe. Virginia was there putting on her blubbering performance. David Boys was saying how Prince Andrew couldn't prove this and that. Well, he didn't have to, because he wasn't making the claims. As I sat there watching the TV, I couldn't help wondering how much Anthony had been paid to sing like a bird and how many viewers were falling for this rubbish. Well, so that I could answer the question, I had to look at the interview. And I tell you, I thought it was a joke. I mean, it was as soft an interview as Oprah would give to Meghan and Harry. I mean, she holds up a photocopy of a photograph that she and nobody says the original. You know, the original of the photograph is a joke. And I'm going to tell you why it's a joke. Virginia Giuffre has given various accounts of where the original is. It's in her parents-in-law lockup, it's in her lockup, it's in storage, it's at the FBI. Or was it the CIA? Or was it the BBC? Or was it PQH? Or wherever else? Let's think of something even more ridiculous. Was it at all? Oh, I know where it was. It was always in Virginia Giuffre's imagination. Well, if it had been at the CIA or the FBI, the lawyers could have had access to it. So that's a lie. It can't have been there. David Boys told a journalist, a very respected journalist who wrote about this last week in the Daily Beast, that the photograph, the original, couldn't be found. David Boys himself has said this. We can take it as read that that original doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? I think that's a very good question, and I tell you what I think the answer is. I think if the original were shown, it would destroy their case. And that's the only reason why the original doesn't exist. You do not have one of the most important things in your life go walkies. I mean, excuse me, I know exactly where in a bank vault my tiaras are. You know, if something has value, you know exactly where it is. I mean, am I going to forget where my tiaras were, what bank they were put in, where the vault is, whether this is, whether that is? Am I going to forget that sort of stuff? I don't think so. I don't think so. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And we're supposed to swallow that horse manure. As for Anthony Figueroa, I mean, all these news programs pay people, and it is amazing how they cue them. And, oh, no, we want you to say this. No, we want you to say that. You know, it's regarded as acceptable journalist ethics. So I just make that point for what it's worth. He certainly seemed to be singing from a different hymn sheet from the one he's sung from before. And what sort of rubbish is this in any event? If she was so terrified, why was she 2 weeks on with him and 2 weeks with Epstein, earning $4,000 a week, according to, I think it was his sister? And let's not forget what Caroline Adriano said. She didn't look at all terrified. She was jubilant that she got the money from Epstein. And she was boasting that she had got Andrew into bed. It seems to me that her conduct suggests that there was something seriously wrong with that photograph as it was reproduced in the Mail on Sunday. Maybe the original bore little or no resemblance to that photograph, or maybe it bore some resemblance. But it's rather like we have a case in England at the moment. Two wags, Colleen Rooney and a woman by the name of Rebecca Vardy, I think her name is, who are Rebecca Vardy suing Colleen Rooney for having accused her of something which it hasn't been said. The evidence seems to indicate that if Rebecca Vardy didn't do it, certainly one of her minions did. And the court orders the minion, whose name I don't even remember, and I'm not going to condescend to look it up, much less remember it, because I don't want to pollute my mind with further filth. It's no more than I absolutely have to pollute my mind with. The court ordered that this woman hand over her mobile phone so that all the texts between her and Rebecca Vardy, which were highly compromising, could be gone through. And the woman says, "Oh, I just dropped it in the North Sea. It doesn't exist anymore." Well, I think maybe we should be calling Mr. Anthony Figueroa North Sea. Because, I mean, if we're, and what really gets me is that people are so caught up in sensationalism, in the vulgar sensationalization of fact, in the disgusting twisting of fact, that as long as they think, "Oh, poor thing, she cried." Any phony can cry if they've got the skill to do it. And I, for one, do not believe one bit of any of Virginia Giuffre's blubber. I think she is right down there with Meghan Markle and others of that hustling ilk. Laura Marie says, "Do you think the photograph with Prince Andrew was photoshopped and wouldn't have held together under professional scrutiny? As a semi-professional photographer, I could see flaws which looked like evidence of being photoshopped. In the USA, original documents are needed for evidence." Well, I'm not a professional and I don't really know whether it was photoshopped or not. I've had people who know something about it say that they think it was photoshopped. And it's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, they settled the lawsuit that they were determined, we're going to get him in court. It's not about money. We want our day in court. Until he demands, his lawyers demand, Andrew Brettler demands, the original of the photograph. All of a sudden, they're willing to settle. Not only willing to settle, they're willing to settle on very advantageous terms to Prince Andrew, as long as Prince Andrew's team will come up with the fig leaf or two to preserve Virginia Giuffre's flexibility and allow her to stay out of prison, which personally I think she should be heading towards forthwith. Elizabeth Taylor says, "Congratulations to you and Mickey. If I was Virginia Giuffre, especially after the gentleman whom is said to have committed suicide in a French jail last evening, she is alleged to have contacted the French police in response to a call for victims to come forward. It is said she gave a lot of information and filed not only in France but the USA. Do you know anything of this? She is singing like a canary and involved in a bigger web than that what she realizes. I would now be running for the hills if that is so." Well, I think I've tried to point out before that there is the hypothesis that Virginia Giuffre is being managed and that she's had little or no choice in bringing this action, and that she has done it because if she doesn't do it, she would end up being charged with serious crimes that would result in her going to prison, if not for the whole of her life, for much of it. However, she has been extremely punitive. You know, Jean-Luc Brunel is somebody I didn't know. I never came across him. He was a model agent long after I was modeling. So I really don't know anything about him to speak of, but he was a very well-established agent. And I have to tell you, when I was modeling, and this was starting in 1968, photographers did try it on for size. So did casting directors. You were lucky if you didn't get hit upon pretty regularly. And I'm going to tell you something that happened to me in 1968. It must have been in April 1968. I was scheduled to go for a test. In those days you had tests. You'd go to various photographers and they test you, and they keep some of the photographs, you keep some and add to your book. His name was Ben Swadowski. And I remember the place very well. It was like an industrial place. It was very photographic. And it was in one of those buildings. I forget what they call them now. But I was the only person in the building with him. And it had a freight lift. They didn't have regular ordinary, elevator, freight elevator. It didn't have regular sort of elevators in those, and they had, the one with the grid and you had to pull it. Anyway, I went on time and he and I were the only two people in the building, and he locked the door, which seemed a little bit extreme, but I didn't think anything of it. And then he started to make serious moves on me. And I remember exactly what I said to him, as if it were yesterday. I said, "Stop right there," because he really became hot and heavy. I said, the penalty for, and I used a four-letter word that I'm going to resile over because this is YouTube, and I'll substitute. I said, the penalty for what you are proposing to do is death in New York. I said, it is a death sentence. You are not going to get voluntarily out of me what you require, and you are trying to force me. I said, you have a choice to make. You are either going to let me walk out of that door right now without further ado, or you are going to have your way with me, and I use the four-letter word, after which the only way to silence me is to, and since this is YouTube, I'll not use the four-letter word that I used, which began with K. I'll say, finish me off, or dispatch me, or whatever word euphemism you'd like to use. I said, those are your choices. Make up your mind right now. He made up his mind. He went, opened the door, and let me out. I went to the nearest telephone booth. In those days, you didn't have mobile phones, obviously. And I phoned up Peggy Grant, who was the main booker, and we used to call her the den mother at the Paul Wagner agency. And I told her what had happened. And she said, thanks. She said, will never send another girl to him. I don't think they ever sent another girl to him. That was the most extreme. But you had guys, you had to, and you flicked off or you'd avoid that. I found that often acting as if you didn't know what they were speaking about was actually a very good way of shutting them down. And if they were still persistent, then you sort of just take the hand and move it in a gingerly way. And most guys, in those days, I used to have a saying actually, I don't knock a guy for trying, I certainly knock him for taking no badly. And so, I mean, everybody tried to emphasize. And that happened in the modelling industry, left, right and centre. So there's no two ways about it. It was what happened. And I am not excusing any of it, because I can tell you something. It put us girls in a very disadvantageous situation. But we womaned up. At least in my generation we did. There was nobody to whine and run to, and unless it was something really serious like what happened with me and Ben Svedowski. Otherwise, you simply just dealt with it. But it was rife. Now, are we going to condemn somebody who did something terrible? Yes. Are we going to condemn everybody who, because of the ethos of the age, tried a little bit on for size? I'm sorry. I think we need to be genuinely compassionate, and we need to not be preoccupied with making victims of ourselves. We have the right to say no, and we can say no. If you don't say no, you don't have the right thereafter to say, I was victimized by some opportunist. No. You also victimized yourself. Because you could have said no. You could have picked up his hand and gone. You didn't have to say yes and take the money and run, which is what Virginia Giuffre did. And now she's trying to pretend that she was a victim. She might have originally been a victim of something, but by the end of this all, she's been a victim of her greed and her complete lack of understanding of what proper morality and proper spiritual values are. That's my take on it. And I'm going to read out what the lawyers for Jean-Luc Brunel said, because Jean-Luc Brunel committed suicide in France. He was placed on the intermediate status of assisted witness for acts of human trafficking and exploiting minors for certain purposes. And his defense lawyers said in a joint statement, his distress was that of a 75-year-old man crushed by a media judicial system which it should be time to question. His lawyers' names are Matthias Chichiportiche, Marianne Abgral, and Christophe Engran. Jean-Luc Brunel has continued to proclaim his innocence. He multiplied his efforts to prove it. His decision to end his life was not driven by guilt, but by a deep sense of injustice. And Virginia Giuffre's comment, because she's also greedy for blood. And I'll tell you, as somebody who was genuinely victimized and didn't get any reward for it, certainly neither financial nor any other, that's not the way people who are genuine victims behave. But I'll say what she said. The suicide of Jean-Luc Brunel, who abused me and countless girls and young women, ends another chapter. I'm disappointed I wasn't able to face him in a final trial to hold him accountable, but gratified that I was able to testify in person last year to keep him in prison. So this is her second suicide. The second scalp, and I use the word suicide advisedly and reservedly, but this is definitely her second scalp. The second corpse on her watch, and she's proud of it. What about all the people, Virginia Giuffre, who have genuinely been victimised? And I'm not referring now to, shall we say, carnal victimisation, all sorts of victimisation. What about women who have suffered in other ways? Do you really think that the way to proceed through life is to set yourself up as some sort of ghoul who is going to pursue people into their grave and then exult when they are there? You, my dear woman, don't know the first thing about being a decent person or of being spiritual. You actually, your attitude tells me that you are a truly chilling and frightening human being. And I wouldn't be surprised if the family member that you accused was speaking the truth, and that all the other people who you accused, who it turned out you had accused unfairly, were definitely speaking the truth. And that several of the others you have subsequently accused were also speaking the truth. And you were simply trading yourself for money. And you are sanctimoniously setting yourself up as somebody who can exult in the death of another human being. I'm sorry. If this is what is regarded as morality nowadays, let me off this space and this earth, because this is truly debased. This is evil. Evil. And if people can't see it and want to feel good about themselves by wallowing in the suffering and mire of others, I'm sorry. Every sinner deserves a chance. And you know, I think Jesus Christ said it best. Let him who is without guilt cast the first stone. Maybe Virginia Giuffre should stop picking up those rocks, because not only does she occupy a glass house, but she is one of the lowest of the low, in my opinion. She has not one redeeming spiritual virtue. She is a punitive, aggressive, hypocrite, sanctimonious, on and on about helping victims. Give away every single penny that you have managed to extract out of the people who you were selling yourself to, and then down the line you decided that you wanted somehow to turn yourself into a victim. Give the money to the true victims, the ones you trafficked. And I hope I don't have to deal with this anymore. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in. Remember, this can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.